The destroyer goes silent. Radar off. Radio's dead. Even the depth sounder, cold. Why does a US warship kill its own voice when a Russian Kilo bears down inside 500 yards? Because silence is a weapon. In the next minutes, you'll see how EM Con Alpha flips the fight, the Dunham vanishes from the Kilo's sensors while AP-8A spreads passive buoys, NATO's seabed ears wake up, and a towed array sketches a fingerprint. No missiles. No pings. Just patience, and a trap that teaches Moscow a costly lesson. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. A quiet submarine lunges inside 500 yards. Why provoke a gray hull at knife fight range? Because pressure breaks discipline. In the Norwegian Sea, the weather does half the work. Low swell, slate sky, cold air that carries sound, and visibility that comes and goes with sheets of spray.
The sub and accompanying tugboat made their way from the North Sea through the Strait of Dover and into the English Channel. Defence Secretary John Healey announced plans to protect undersea cables and pipelines from the threat of Russian subs with the Atlantic Bastion.
It's the kind of water where a diesel-electric boat earns its nickname. The improved Kilo, Project 636.3, runs on batteries and refined electric drive when it wants to vanish. NATO calls it a black hole for a reason. Under certain conditions, it sinks beneath the ocean's own noise floor and leaves almost nothing to hold. Meanwhile, the Kilo rides sub-periscope depth, where sea clutter can hide a mast and wakes blur in the chop. It angles across the destroyer's bow, stealing the right-of-way and forcing a quick decision cycle. At this range, half a kilometer is nothing. It's a sprint measured in seconds, not minutes. A misread bearing drift, a missed helm order, and steel meets steel. That is only the physical risk. The bigger hazard is electronic. Surface combatants live by emissions. Radar confirms contacts. Active sonar clears the path.
Marchwood-based support ship RAF Tide Surge used her Merlin helicopter to monitor the Soviet-era attack boat. The MOD said in a statement the program was in direct response to the resurgence in Russian submarine and underwater activity.
Data links tie the picture together. The Kilo wants all of it. This is the play. Close so hard the crew feels a collision coming, then wait for fear to push a button. One ping and the water lights up with information. A sweep of air search radar paints the horizon. A burst of network traffic announces mode, timing, discipline. Even a safety depth sounder chirp adds to the mosaic. The sub doesn't want a kill shot here. It wants a read on sensors, settings, and habits. Think of it as a sting built on nerves, not torpedoes. But there's a trap inside that threat. By lunging in, the sub surrenders standoff, the cushion that protects it from counters. It gambles that the destroyer will talk first. If the ship stays quiet, the math flips. At knife range, every move the Kilo makes gets louder to passive ears.
Russian submarine Krasnodar was monitored in a coordinated 3-day operation by the UK and NATO. The clash at sea was revealed just days after the Royal Navy issued a dire warning over the threat from Russia.
Minute rudder deflections carve vortices that have a tone. RPM steps on an electric motor leave a soft, rhythmic tick. A 2-meter depth change squeezes hull fittings and shifts ballast with a faint creak. Under load, those microsignals stack into a signature that trained techs can tease apart. It's flashlight tag in ocean form. The first player to turn on a light wins a moment of clarity but gets seen from miles away. The smart play is to keep your light off and use your ears. That forces the other side to move, and movement is noise. Most crews would transmit and deter, because no one wants a submarine under the bow. But the better move is colder. Deny the sub anything to read. Let its own actions draw the outline. So the Kilo tests patience. Awkward crossing angles. Small speed pulses to bait a response. A mast that breaks the skin for a heartbeat then knifes back down. It expects radar to go active, sonar to click, data links to chatter. Instead, nothing answers. The ocean stays dark from the destroyer's side.
Dramatic pictures show one of Vladimir Putin's stealthy subs, known to some as black holes, stalking close to the UK. The new multi-million-pound high-tech force comes after the Navy said the number of Russian vessels threatening UK waters had increased 30% in the past 2 years.
Inside combat, watches lean into headsets and chase bearing lines that thicken with each tiny adjustment from the contact. Data builds without a single broadcast. Here's the mini payoff. The attack wasn't to sink a destroyer. It was to harvest. The Kilo showed teeth to make the ship speak. It gets silence instead. And silence cheats the plan. The near-collision gambit yields no emissions, no timings, no modes, just a trace of its own stress under pressure. With the board set, the Dunham chooses the uncommon move, Con Alpha. Everything that talks, stops. The fight shifts into the Kilo's least favorite arena, a quiet ocean owned by passive ears. The destroyer kills its own voice. How does going dark become an offensive strike? By making the ocean do the talking for you. Con Alpha is simple in practice and brutal in effect. Radar cold, radios cold, no active sonar, even the depth sounder is off. The ship looks mute to anyone listening for emissions, but the crew isn't blind.
A Russian submarine was shadowed through the English Channel by the Royal Navy in the midst of a raging storm. The Atlantic Bastion will be comprised of a network of drones, gliders and surveillance aircraft designed to protect the UK's undersea infrastructure.
They still ride bearings on the towed array. They still read sea state and wake. They still watch time, speed, and angle off the bow. Silence trims options, not awareness. So how do you fight without a broadcast? You lean on passive collection and allied networks. The destroyer trails a towed array like a long ear in the water, far enough behind the screws to hear clean. NATO seabed sensors in the region add fixed, quiet eyes that never blink. Overhead, AP-8A Poseidon stays high, not to shout with active pings, but to lay a pattern of passive sonobuoys, small underwater microphones that listen for what the Kilo can't hide forever. No one is pinging. They're building a fingerprint. Sonar tech sort the feed by sound type, cavitation textures where microbubbles form and pop on the prop, gearbox tones that rise and fall with load, blade rate harmonics that tick at a steady count, tiny changes that reveal speed, trim, and stress. Layer by layer the contact stops being a ghost and starts being a file with traits. This isn't guesswork. It's patient sorting of physics under pressure. Meanwhile, the P8 adds a twist. It uses its N/APY-10 to cross-check the surface for a periscope or snorkel signature without sweeping the contact with loud, revealing radar near the fight. Think of it as checking the doorway with a mirror rather than stepping into the hall. You get cues without giving away your stance. The goal is the same everywhere in the stack: collect without confessing. Now the squeeze. On the surface, helm keeps wake discipline. No wild turns, no froth that masks the array's listen. In the air, the buoy field isn't random, it's set in geometry that boxes likely routes. Aboard the destroyer, the towed array feeds bearings that tighten as the sub moves. 3 axes of pressure, 1 result. The Kilo's safe lanes start to close. Not by threat. By math. The sub reacts. It goes a little deeper to hug a layer. It drops RPM to push cavitation onset down. It feathers rudder to shave turn noise. Each change is a breadcrumb. Depth changes stress hardware just enough to show a tell. RPM steps shift the harmonic ladder. Rudder deflection paints a temporary swirl a trained ear can catch. Every adjustment is data. Every data point cuts uncertainty. You can feel the room settle in combat. Headsets slide on. Pencils mark ticks on bearing time rate. The operator on the array calls subtle drift with calm cadence. No one shouts. No one needs to. The track firms without a single broadcast from the ship. That's the punchline of going dark. You trade instant clarity for control, then buy clarity back with patience. The win here is scientific. Dunham's team records the Kilo's acoustic fingerprint and how it behaves when boxed by silence. In the long game, that turns a stealth edge into a known rhythm. Next time it creeps toward a choke point like the GUK gap, the file comes off the shelf. Detection gets faster. Evasion gets harder. Freedom of action shrinks. No missiles fired. No headlines. But the message travels just the same. Patience and sensor fusion outrun brute force. And the Kilo learns that in an ocean owned by passive ears, silence doesn't hide you. It frames you. The loudest ship loses first. In these fights, silence, patience, and fused sensors seize the initiative without firing. You win by owning information, not by flashing steel. That's the shift. If you want the tactics that win these shadow wars, subscribe. What would you do in that first minute? Transmit to shove the contact off, or go dark and pull the thread until the pattern appears? Comment your choice below. This is the story of control over spectacle, of a fleet that turns quiet water into leverage. Subscribe and join a community that seeks to understand the realities of modern conflict.